Okay, Chapter 9. Chapter 9 will be a good review of a bunch of tools and techniques that we've looked at while also kind of introducing some pretty basic concepts in animation. So in this chapter, we're going to make an animated GIF in Photoshop. Now, there are many other better programs to animate in than Photoshop. Like, this is an old feature that doesn't get used very much anymore. But for us who are just new to Photoshop, don't want to learn like another program, this is a really good little toe dip into some of the concepts we care about. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this monk file. We're going to separate out its eyeballs so that they can, let's grab the eye layer. And so we can move it around within the picture frame. And then we're also going to add in a bunch of notes and animate him sliding off the screen just to kind of practice this. Okay, so to get started, we will first close this image. And then we are going to open up our surprised monk. So go to Open, navigate to wherever your files are at. In my case, they're on my desktop, although here's what we're going to make. Woo, look at it go. So Files, Gifs, and we want Surprised Monk, and we'll click Open. Now I'm going to set my workspace back to Essentials because we were in Painting from last chapter, and then just to make everything consistent, I'm going to reset Essentials so it looks like everybody else's. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to make several layers. So we need a layer for the monk because he is going to move. We need a layer for his eyeballs because those are going to move. And then we need a layer for each piece of text that's going to appear. And then since we don't want a transparent background, we also need a white background layer. Okay, so layer order will be from top to bottom: white background, eyes, monk, nope 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let's isolate out our monk. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock this layer, and I'm going to come up to my quick select tool, and I'm going to grab, oops, that's not quick select. I want quick select. This new brush thing here keeps messing me up. All right, so anyway, I've got quick select active, and I want to grab my monk. So to get started, we're just going to try select subject. And we can see that it does a pretty good job, but not a perfect job. So like 3-4 years ago when I first started using this as an assignment, it missed quite a bit of the book over here, but we can still see that it's missing some of the stuff down here. So I'm going to click the the add to my button, and I'm going to add in that little section down there. And let's turn on enhanced edge. So again, like these tools change over time. So that's one of the things that's neat about this is that they are continuously updated and upgraded as these tools age. All right, next step is to click Layer Mask to remove the background. Now we also want to, you know what, actually, for this one, it might be better to delete the background. Let's go ahead and take a step back, and we're going to actually invert our selection, and let's do a destructive edit and just nuke that background. And then I will click Command or Control D to deselect. Rather than putz around with that layer mask while we're trying to animate, let's just go ahead and delete out that background. Let's add our white background layer. So I'm going to click the New Layer button. I'll click and drag it down to the bottom. Let's go ahead and start labeling stuff. So this is going to be white background, Mr. D. And then this is going to be our monk. And we'll make the white background layer active. I'm going to go ahead and go up to Select All or Command or Control A. I'm going to hit Shift Delete to get my fill. Similarly, in the context where tool taskbar thing, you could also pick the paint bucket and fill it white, so like this, and then you would pick white, whichever way you want to do it. And I'm going to drop my selection, so Command or Control D or click Deselect. So now we have our monk, yay, as his own thing. Next is we need to make his eyeballs their own thing. So I'm going to zoom. I'll make sure that the monk layer is active, and I'm going to grab that quick select again so I can quickly select his eyeballs. Now with the quick select tool active, I'm going to go ahead and come up to the toolbar, and I'm going to set the size to 15, and I am going to grab the pupil and the sclera. It doesn't really have an iris in there. It's kind of not separated into its own thing right now. And so as I'm adding and subtracting from this, like right now it's just in add mode, so I can, and it adds. But like if I end up with too much, like I've got a little too much under there, if I hold down the Alt Option key, it switches it to subtract mode, which makes it pretty easy to add and subtract to the selection. And that looks adequate for our purposes. So I'm going to come up to edit, and I'm going to go to cut, and I'm going to do a special kind of paste. I'm going to do edit. Oh, we need to turn enhance edge off. You see how like you got that nastiness in there? Let's go back up to our deselect layer. And we'll turn enhanced edge back off, and then we'll go ahead and do this. There we go. And we'll grab this eyeball. That also looks adequate. And then we'll come up to edit, cut. I have the white background layer active. Try edit, cut again. There we go. And then we'll do edit, paste special, paste in place, and that drops it back into the same spot. All right, let's drag the eye layer to be below the monk layer. And I'll label this eyes. I'm going to temporarily hide the monk layer by poking it in the eye. So now I can just see these two eyeballs. I'll go B for brush. I will right click. I will go to general brushes, and I am going to grab hard round. With the hard round brush active, I'll just do 15 in size. And then I'm also going to do 15 in hardness. And what I want is some of this nice pink. So I'm going to hold down I for eyedropper on my keyboard. And this is one where it's better to use the hotkey than come over and click on it. So if I just hold this down and I click on this pink right here, and then I release the I for eyedropper, we can see that it switches back to the tool that I was previously using, making it a little bit faster and easier to go through stuff. And what you want to do is you just kind of want to increase the size of the sclera, what would be the white part of the eye, but in this image, it ended up being a little pink. And this way, when we move this layer underneath, it will look like his eyeballs are moving around. And like if I don't add this pink in there, I just end up with white in his eye, rather than making it look like his eyes are moving. And you can make it as big as you want. It doesn't matter all that much, but it needs to be at least this big. Now, when I click back on the monk layer, oops, I made it too big. So E for erase tool, and let's just clear a little bit of that off. There we go, and maybe even come a little bit further in. Now, when I hit V for move tool, see how effective that is? It looks like his eyeballs are moving around now. You can see that I ended up with too much over there for that edge. But this makes a very effective way to kind of move those eyeballs around inside of there. Okay, next step. Next, we want to add in our text. So I'm going to hit Command or Control 0 to fit everything on my screen. I'll hit this little black-white button right here to reset my foreground and background colors to black and white. And I will hit T for text tool. And you know what? Let's make the monk layer active so it will put it above the monk layer when I'm adding my text. All right, I'm going to start up here for my first text. I'm going to do Badoop, and I'm going to set it to Arial black is fine. Sizing, we want it to be, I don't know, 150 or so. And we'll do nope, all in caps. Now, we do have some settings left over from the last assignment where we did some stuff down here in character, but I don't really care about the rest of those settings, so that's fine. We'll just go ahead and stick with what we've got. And I'm going to drag this nope to be about here. Now, rather than redo that step each time, I'm going to hold down Alt-Option and be like, Kadoop. And I'll be like Alt-Option and Kadoop. And note that I'm moving these with the Move tool, duplicating those out. I will label this one Nope 1. This is up in the top left. Here's Nope 2. We'll label you Nope 2. And we'll label you Nope 3. And I'm going to go ahead and hide all 3 Nope layers just so I can't see them right now. And I don't need this contextual taskbar for the rest of this assignment. So I'm just going to go ahead and hide it so it's not in my way. And maybe zoom out a little bit because it's going to be easier in a minute. All right, so I've got my monk layer ready. I've got my layers over yonder active. I've got Nope 1, 2, 3, monk, eyes, and white background. All right, let's do this. Animation time. Top right, click the drop down, and we're going to pick motion. Now, for some reason, way back in the day, you could actually make video in Photoshop. I can't recommend not doing this enough. This is an exercise of self-hatred. So I would never, just don't do video if you can help it. There's way better programs for it. Similar with animation, but this one's kind of quick. This is quicker and easier than the video timeline. And I'm going to click this little drop down next to it and pick Create Frame Animation. So this will allow me to create an animation. So now I will click the actual Create Frame Animation button, and we have my first frame. Okay, so if you're not aware, animations are made up of individual drawings that when shown in rapid succession, so like 30 drawings per second or so, you have the illusion of continuous movement. So like if I had this guy and I moved him over slightly, and then I moved him over slightly, and I moved him over slightly, and I moved him over slightly, I get the appearance of my animation. Now, what animators will do is that they will have 2 frames that are set up as a start and an end, or keyframes. So let's say my character is going to start here, and later he is going to slide off the screen over yonder. And the animator will then make a second frame. So now I've got 2 frames right here, although it kept that movement. Let's back it up a little bit. Let's create the new frame, and then we'll move him down. There we go. So now I have my frame where he's in place and my frame where he slid off. Of course, I was dumb and had my white background layer active. There we go. So before and after. Now, to get the in-between frames, or the in-betweeners, or tweening, we will add additional frames called tweens. And so when it plays, we can see him slide off the screen. Now, in this case, we have only a handful of frames, so the animation is not very smooth. So animators will have keyframe 1. They will have keyframe 2. Keyframe 2 will be the end movement, and then between these 2 frames, they will add tweens that will make that movement for them. Neat. So what we need to do is we need to set up a series of keyframes, and then we're going to tween them. Now, something that kind of drives everyone up the wall in Photoshop is there's no way to group or label keyframes away from tween frames, so we're just going to have to keep track of what we're doing, and it's a little exhausting. All right, so we have keyframe 1, him sitting in place. We're going to do keyframe 2, and for keyframe 2, we're going to go ahead and grab the eye layer, and we're going to nudge it a little bit where it's just kind of staring off in space. So I have the move tool active, I have the eye layer active, and I'm going to hit up on my keyboard twice. So it's like he's looking away off into the distance, having just read something weird. Then we're going to hit keyframe, we're going to hit the new frame button right here for yet another frame. He's going to make eye contact with us. So we're going to hit the arrow keys left twice, and now it looks like he's looking at us. So we have keyframe 1, reading, keyframe 2, what did I just read? Keyframe 3, I'm looking at you. Now let's make keyframe 4, where he slides off the screen. So I'm going to come down here and make a new frame. And to slide him off the screen, I'm going to make the eye layer active. I'm going to shift click onto the monk layer, so both of these are highlighted. And I'm going to, if you're not zoomed out, you'll need to zoom out. And I'm going to click and drag the monk and eyes down here to the bottom right. And the easy way to do it is like, here's where his eyes are, and then just continue that angle down until he's completely off frame. So reading, what, who, by. Having done that, we now want to make our tweens. So we want to have Photoshop automatically add in the frames necessary for that movement. So I am going to make that first frame active, and then I'm going to click the tween button. The tween buttons, again, these little series of dots. Default settings here are fine. We're going to add 5 keyframes to all layers, and we'll click OK. And if we play it, we can see now that his eyes come up, and then it kind of blinks through these other ones really quickly. Now we want to add keyframes between some of the other ones. So I'm going to make frame 8 active. Which again, I can't say keyframe 1, 2, 3, and 4 anymore because I don't have a way of labeling them. Thank you so much, Photoshop, for not fixing that. And I'm going to add tween frames between 8 and 9. And I'll click the tween button. Default 5 and everything else will be just fine. And now I've ended up with 14 frames. Now I can add hidden keyframes by extending the duration of certain frames. So I'm going to make frame 8 active if it isn't already, and I'll click this drop down. I'll say, please delay for 1 second, which will automatically add basically hidden keyframes, or not keyframes, hidden tween frames. Then I'm going to do the same thing for number 9. So this one's set to 1. This one's set to 1. This one is also set to 1. And when we play it, we can see that he pauses. slides off, and then continues on. Now, something that's going to be a little irritating is that the timing right here can vary from the GIF and depending on where you view the GIF. Because again, this is an old tool and it's not 100%. Like, it doesn't always assign the 1 second pause in the spot that you expect it to assign it to. Now we need to add in our text. So I'm going to start by making, frame 9 active if it isn't active already. And I will turn on Nope 1, and then I'll do 10, and I'll do 2, and I'll do 11, and I'll do 3, and I'll do 12, and I'll do 1, and I'll do 13, and I'll do 2, and I'll do 14, and I'll do 3 again. So now that text will blink and appear on that screen as he slides off. All right, go ahead and save this if you haven't saved it yet. Because you always want your PSD file. I'm going to go ahead and throw this on my desktop. And then we want to export this as a GIF. So like if you go to File and you do to save as a copy, there is a GIF file format in here, but this is not an animated GIF. We have to use a special old type of export. So I'm going to come up to File and I'm going to do Export, and I'm going to do Save for Web Legacy. In Save for Web Legacy, we want to pick GIF 32 dithered. Dithered will kind of help keep the appearance a little bit cleaner, and then 32 is limiting it to 32 colors. So like if I come up here and I do 64, we can see that I will end up with way more colors, and we just want to do 32 dithered because this will help keep our file size down. So like right now, even with that reduction, we're at 439 kilobytes. And for like a lot of animated GIF forms, these need to be pretty small. Similarly, where it says height 1500, we definitely don't need 1500. Let's go ahead and do 500, which is about a third as big. We can see we end up with a much smaller GIF, and then now it should export just fine. Also, right here for looping, I would normally, this should be defaulting to forever, but if it isn't, go ahead and pick forever. That means it will just continuously loop. Otherwise, if you don't want it to continuously loop, you would just do once. Go ahead and click Save, throw it on your desktop or wherever. Notice that it adds in all these lines where I had spaces, because spaces don't play nice with old save file dialogues. And now we have our new version of the GIF, and we can see that it works quite well. All right, so hopefully this was a little bit fun, and hopefully you learned a little bit about animation. If you're interested in animation, Toon Boom is great, along with Adobe Animate if you want to make little kind of shorter graphics. Anyway, have fun. All right, let's hop out real quick and take a quick look at what we can actually animate in Photoshop. Now, unfortunately, it's not very much. So like if you're using a real animation program, we've got all sorts of stuff that's really easy to animate. In Photoshop, we've got basically 3 things. So if I have an empty layer, and let's grab the brush tool, and get a nice big brush boy, and so we got some blub here. So what I can animate is like what we did in the chapter, is I can animate position. So I can have 2 frames, and in the second frame, I can move it over, and then I can tween between the 2, and it will be animated. Yay, cool. So besides movement, I can also animate opacity. So like, can I see it? So I can drop my opacity to 0 or some other value. And let's throw another one on here and turn the opacity all the way back up. And let's throw in some tweening. And nuke that last frame because we don't need it anymore. Oops, that nuked the layer, not the frame. And now when I animate this, we can see that it kind of fades in and out of existence. Cool. The other thing that I can animate pretty easily in Photoshop is anything in the FX menu. So if I come down to the FX menu and say, let's say we add in outer glow. And that looks pretty good for an outer glow, and I'll click OK. And let's make a new frame. And in the first frame, let's go ahead and turn off the outer glow. And in the second frame, let's turn it on. And then we make another third frame so we can do our ending and turn it off so we can have a nice loop. And we'll be like, tween please. And we'll be like, tween please. And we'll nuke that last frame because we don't need it anymore. And when we play it, we've got a nice kind of pulsing effect created by the outer glow. So anything that is in the FX menu, which is basically going to be an opacity thing, honestly, can also be tweened down here in the bar. Now, stuff that you're going to want to be able to tween that you could in a real animation program that you can't in Photoshop is stuff like anything in the anything that's going to be done with the my brain turns on the free transform. So let's say I wanted to do like a zoom. So if I wanted to do a zoom, I will unfortunately have to make a layer for each frame, and that kind of sucks. So like if I wanted to do like a zoom effect, I would duplicate this layer, and yep, that's fine. And I would go into free transform, and this would be like 120. And let's duplicate it again, go into free transform. This would be like 120 again, and again, and again. And yeah, okay, this is not fun, but like this is how you would have to do it. So now I've got 3 versions of this, and I've got my first frame. Let's go ahead and hide these 3 for now and make my new frame. We'll turn you off and on, make another frame. We'll make another frame. And unfortunately, we'll have to do a manual ramp down as well. And then I don't need to remake this because it will loop to the first one at the start. And now I've got a nice zooming effect, but it was a little bit of a drag because I had to do it manually over here in my layers. Now, if I try to tween this, it will just kind of add opacity between the two because that's what's changing here. So let's say I add a 5-step tween. We can see that we get this kind of goofy fade in effect that, depending on what you're animating, can actually be useful. But for the most part, you'll probably not tween anything. So hopefully this is useful for doing the do-it-yourself. And again, like this is just pretty basic animation in a program that's not super optimized for it. So like if you enjoy animating here in Photoshop, it'll be more complicated in other programs, but it'll also be a lot more fun as you just have way more control. Anyway, hope you have fun and good luck.